Right, can you hear me? You good? Headphones on, everyone? Or not, actually. Might be better without the headphones on this session. So for me, this is my 5th presentation in 4 days of conference. I did a conference the first 2 days of the week, so it may come across as if I'm slightly tired and exhausted, and that is true. So I'm going to talk about federated data products. I'd like a show of hands. Who is using data products today? Awesome. Right, so if we have time at the end, I expect half-decent questions from you. And I don't know if we're going to have time because I've not actually presented this before. The slides were put together in the last 15 minutes, quite literally. When it says a different point of view or a view of different points, I hope this hasn't kind of been mislabeled, this federated data products. This is a random assortment of points that I'm going to try and loosely link together based on things that I've seen in the field, conversations that I've had, and advice that I've given to chief data officers kind of over the last, year, 2 years around data mesh, data products. I'm not really sure why we're in the modern data stack talking about data products, but hey-ho. So yeah, hopefully you get some value out of this session. And I guess let's kick off. So this is what I'm going to talk about, or it was before the slides got all moved around. So, but broadly, some of this stuff, a little bit about data products, data mesh, how they relate, just in case no one knows. We're not going to spend a lot of time on that. A little bit about data in the product, and some thoughts, some stuff about creating them, and some stuff about crossing the divide. Actually, this is completely out of sequence now I look at it, but that's all going to be fun. Before we dive in, feel free to come to the booth. It's the one that says Starburst on it. We have some of these books to give away. I am a co-author of them. If you have any complaints about them, talk to the other co-authors, not me. And that's basically that stuff. So you can also download them from our website. I do work for Starburst. There will be not much Starburst content in this session because you've probably been to enough sessions where people have said, buy my stuff, and that's not really my approach. So, we're going to start slightly controversially, perhaps, with a slide which I do not have permission to reproduce. And so this is the hype cycle for data management 2023 by Gartner. Again, I do not have permission to reproduce this slide, I do not think. And as you can see over here, we've got, I think, data mesh up here with a big red X, and we've got data products somewhere over here without a big red X. And I guess the reason I put this up is because this is wrong, in my opinion, and that's just my opinion. And the reason I say that is because I spent time across Asia Pacific. The first 2 days of this week, I was in Berlin, talking to various people, senior positions. And what I would say is, in mainland Europe, data mesh is very, very, very heavily adopted, or being heavily adopted. Every single person I spoke to this week was very mature in their data mesh deployment. They had lots of data products. They had automation. They had figured out some aspects of federated computational governance. So people are doing this. They are not doing this in America. And that's why I think maybe it's in the wrong place. So this is my... hang on. This is kind of my thinking on this, that actually data mesh is down here, right? More broadly across the world. But data products have overtaken data mesh. We talk a lot about data products. I've seen a lot of people deploy data meshes, data products. The thing is, what is a data product? And there are lots and lots of definitions, but people think that they are deploying data products and in operation, in production, and they are using them and they are getting value. So I don't believe that they're over here on this innovation trigger. I think they're actually being used and they're going to kind of continue. I actually think data mesh will probably come back as a concept at some point in the future. So I guess, what is a data product? 4 years on, and it has been 4 years since we've kind of been thinking about this and deploying things and trying stuff out. We've got, the 4 pillars of data mesh. I think data products are in the middle. They're the most tangible thing. They're the thing that provide value. And that goes on to, you will hear lots of people and they go, oh, we need discoverability, addressability, and findability, and scalability, and all those good things. And that's cool, and we do. But fundamentally, I think the reason why we want to move away from the existing approach, which is very warehouse-oriented, whether that's on a lake as a lake house or whether that's in a warehouse, and moving towards this concept of data products, and they are different, in my opinion. Data products are the antithesis of the warehouse approach. The reason we want to do this is because we want to get value in the fastest possible time. I don't have time to move all my data into a lake house and then, into a lake and then model it, right? I need an answer today. I don't care about that infrastructure stuff. I don't care about data modeling for everyone else. I care about data modeling for my thing. I care about getting an answer to my question. That to me is what is where data products kind of add value. And then if we think about this, and this is a little bit of maybe future-facing, this is some of my thoughts on this. Today, when we think about data products, most people, whether they are doing this or not, or whether they've given it thought, data products are actually a configuration file. Right, and that sounds like a random thing to say, but to me, a data product is a set of instructions that basically say, give me some computers, run a compute engine on those computers, run some code on that compute engine, do some stuff with metadata, do some stuff with security, close down the infrastructure. There are some organizations, some vendors out there, none of them are here actually, interestingly, who are looking at that. What I would think about is a future concept, which is the data product runtime, or basically a container approach to data products. And I think this might catch on, I don't know, but what we're starting to move away from is the idea of interacting with tables and interacting with images and containers and things like Kubernetes. So that's just an interesting observation. You may disagree. And then I kind of cover this on the previous bit, but I still see this discussion about, it's not appeared, what is a data product? And a lot of people say, it's a piece of data. Fundamentally that's sort of wrong. It doesn't make sense. If it was, data products wouldn't be a thing because we've done that for a long time. All the way over to this concept, which I kind of just described, give me some infrastructure, compute, etc. I actually think most organizations are going to settle here, which is a configuration file that says, and when I say configuration file, let me come back to that in a moment, but a configuration file that says run some code, chuck out some data, have some sort of metadata that's associated with it that we put into a catalog, have some security policies that we put into a security engine, that all the engines that we use to interact with that data are going to kind of comply with. And I think that's broadly where most organizations are kind of settling. When I say a configuration file, that might be behind a user interface, and it may be that we interact with that through APIs, JSON APIs, etc. So if I did do that, then it would look like a JSON file. So that's kind of what I mean when I say like a configuration file. So we can all agree, though, that there is some aspect of data associated with a data product. And what's interesting about this is data modeling. And I think this is interesting, but then I don't do much else with my life apart from thinking about data mesh and data products. And when I think about this, in the past we had lots of different modeling approaches, and I'm aware there's like Data Vault out there, and there's Inman, and there's Kimball, and other models, but typically they've been based around this kind of warehouse approach. We're going to stage our data, we're going to structure it in some way that hopefully, if we follow the data warehousing methodology, maps to the enterprise. So we have the concepts of a customer, we have the concept of a product, etc., etc. But when we think about data products, I would suggest that actually no one's really talking about this, and this seems like a bit of a gap. So for customer-focused data products, and I'm not going to sort of touch on source-aligned because I actually think that you've got a lot of options that we can get into. But for consumer-focused data products that end consumers are going to interact with, I think we need to think about data modeling. One approach might be Kimball. And for those that don't know, Kimball is based on this concept of, data marts, where you've got a fact table, a bunch of dimensions around it, and you sort of have those relationships between the facts and the dimensions. There's a bit more to it than that, but broadly that's the approach. I'm not here to teach Kimball. But the nice idea with this is if we have dimensions, we can start thinking about how they operate between data products. So we could share dimensions. So I could use the same definition of let's say a customer across my risk and across my marketing data products, as an example. So that's one approach. Another approach I've seen is this concept of one big table. I've been in this in this space for a very long time, and we used to call this analytical base tables, where we would just denormalize everything into one big thing with lots and lots of columns. And I didn't realize, but that's actually come back as a new concept, sort of 20 years later. And that's OBT. And so we might, in our data product, have our data represented as a single big table. That's an approach. The last one is quite interesting, and this came up in a podcast by Benjamin Rowajan and Joe Rees, who I think was knocking around here yesterday. And he's sort of been looking at data modeling outside of data products, but this concept of query-driven data modeling, where essentially we run a query, and the output of that query is our data. And then maybe we persist that somewhere. And clearly there's very little kind of conceptual or logical design in there. It's basically at the physical layer, we are literally running a query. And that's, I think, very fast in terms of being agile and being able to model data for for a sort of a single use case. And so if we think about a single use case, we can think about this, and there's a lot on this slide, so apologies for that. There's a link here, if you've got really good eyes or a really good camera. You can find a blog, and it's about 12 pages that I wrote earlier this year, talking about this in a bit more detail, this concept of value-based data engineering, which maps directly into essentially value-based data product modeling, data product engineering. And actually, when we're thinking about data products, we can think about this concept over here. This is adapted actually from some work that I think Gartner did way back when, maybe the 2016, 17, something like that. And we can build, in theory, you could suggest that we can build data products when we know the question and we know the answer, and that's cool. I would argue there's not a lot of incremental value, right? We have stuff, we have data in a place, we can already run queries against it. More interestingly, where I think there is significant value is up here. Where we don't necessarily know the question, and we don't necessarily know the data. What we want to do is we want to start playing with that data, not caring where it is, because we don't care, we shouldn't care. We are building data products, building them really quickly, trying stuff out, enabling this kind of concept of kind of curiosity to figure out if there's value. And you might go, well, who does that? Who has the time to do that? And again, in some of my discussions with chief data officers, it turns out that a lot of them, most of them actually, that I did an informal survey of, allow their data engineering teams somewhere between 10 and 20% of their time to look at data and try things out. And I was quite surprised when I heard that statistic, but that's kind of what came back in that kind of informal survey. So this is kind of where I think we start with data products, is this kind of quadrant 4, right? So we want to build things quick, we want to determine if there's value, and we don't want to have to build pipelines and CDC or replicate data or any of that stuff. We just want to kind of carry on. So to do this, to be able to do this quickly and whatnot, we need to be able to cross the divide, as I call it. And this is actually close to some of the original work by Zhamak back in 2019, Zhamak Degani, who designed or wrote the book on data mesh, where we have a data product that spans operational analytical data. We shouldn't care that we are interacting with data that comes from an analytical system, a warehouse, a lake house. We shouldn't care that the data comes from an operational system that's sat behind, let's say an Oracle system that sat behind an application. We should just be able to build data products that span those really, really easily, right? And this allows that experimentation. And I'll go further. I'll say, that's pretty cool, right? But actually, maybe we want to do that across organizations. Let's build a data product which uses data from different places, again, without knowing or caring where data resides. In a governed and controlled way, of course, but this is where I think we should start to kind of aim. And this could be, organization 1 and 2, based on some sort of M&A activity, or it could be, we're doing some sort of sharing of data across those planes and across those organizations. We're starting to see organizations do this. And if we take that a little further, this is where an interesting concept comes out which is this idea that we have a federated data product, and by that I mean data from different places, and we can enable that, use that to enable us to do migrations. So let's say we had a bunch of data that was on-premise, or a bunch of data that was in a cloud platform, and we want to migrate that to somewhere else. But we want to do that without impacting the end users. The concept of a federated data product allows us to do that. So there's some kind of benefits that we get, which are probably unexpected from thinking about data products in a federated way, in a way where they can access the data where it resides without having to kind of move it. And then we think about, or I think about, how once we've built these data products, once we've done that curiosity stuff, we may decide that there's enough value in that data product that we want to operationalize it. We may want to put that data product, that one big table, that materialized view, whatever it is, we may want to bring that into our cloud data warehouse. Perhaps our cloud data warehouse is expensive, and so what we should be doing at this point is going, or deciding, is there enough value that I'm getting out of this data product for the cost involved in operationalizing it and building things around performance and security and governance and actually running it in that warehouse to make it make sense, or shall I just keep it in my kind of virtualized or federated state? And when we think about operationalizing data products, these are some of the considerations that I think are worth thought. And I'm just going to touch on a couple. I'm conscious of time. So security. I'm not going to go into identity management, not going to go into encryption of data across wires and all that good stuff, but I'm going to say RBAC, role-based access control, and I'm going to say ABAC, attribute access control. And what I'm going to say here is fundamentally the concept of RBAC, role-based access control, is, I would suggest, completely at odds with the concept of a data product. I'm building a data product. I want people to use my data product. I don't care who uses my data product, as long as they access my data product and they're allowed to access my data product, with whatever security and PII and governance controls I need in place. But if I think about role-based access control, I need to know every single person in my organization. I need to know everything about those people in my organization, because I need to know what privileges they have. I need to know if Matt in marketing has access to PII data, because I'm going to build that role, that access permission, associate that with his role, and put it into my data product. Clearly, that is completely unscalable. So we have to think about different ways, and ABAC, I think, is a great answer. And the idea behind ABAC, for those that aren't aware, is I build a data product, and I attach a tag, or some tags, let's say a PII tag, to the data in my data product. Now it's up to Matt's manager in marketing to basically say, yep, Matt is a reliable sort of chap. He can have access to this data. Or his manager can say, no, actually he's fairly unscrupulous, so he can't have access to the data. Now I know nothing about Matt, and nor do I care, and that's how it should be. But we know that the security that Matt has, and the access he has to that data, is controlled. And so ABAC is, in my opinion, the kind of the future of things like the authorization framework, and especially when we think about security with respect to data products. So I'm conscious of time. So, hang on. What was on the previous slide? So, there we go. Yeah, no, that's all fine. Sorry, I was wondering if I'd missed something. So when we think about operationalizing data products, another consideration is it's got to be easy. So if you make stuff hard, people don't do it. And I think the problem is often between the keyboard and the chair. I think that's also true in this case, right? So having this idea where we have to sort of find some data, move some data, integrate it, publish it, figure out the value, let's not bother with that. Let's just find data, publish it, establish value, get into our loop. And with that in mind, and this is something that I continuously say, data products need proactive management, right? We don't want to get into where we were before, where we build millions of marts, and no one knew which one was useful, which one wasn't. We couldn't delete anything. We had a mess. Doesn't matter if we're on premise or in the cloud. We just end up with an unwieldy set of data. So with proactive management, what we're actually doing is incentivizing people to to make their data products as good as they can be. So instead of responding and waiting for someone to phone up and complain, we monitor the users of our data product, we monitor the queries they run, we monitor how many times they're running queries, and we modify our queries. Thank you. I've got more time than I expected. We modify our queries, our data products to meet those requirements. So it may be the first thing someone does with the data in our data product is join it with data from another data product. So what do? Well, armed with this information, we may build a new data product, which is the combination of those two pieces of data. Or we may update our existing data product, and that gets us into sort of versioning and contracts, and that's a cool discussion, but perhaps not for today. But the emphasis here is on proactive management. So now, if people aren't using our data product, let's kill our data product. We don't end up in this situation where we got loads of stuff. Now, apologies for those that have heard me present sort of around this area before. How do we get people to do this? So one of my favorite examples is a large marketing agency that have adopted data products. They pay people money. So if I'm in marketing, or if I'm in finance, or if I'm in operations and I build a data product and lots of people use it, the data engineers in that part of the organization get a bigger bonus at the end of the month. So that is a way of incentivizing people to be proactive. I'm not suggesting every organization does that, but that's a kind of an example of what's going on in the industry. And then that brings us back to value. And I've got 2 slides for this, because my slide person over here has not skipped the slide, so that's cool. So I'm going to go to this one, because I prefer this one. So essentially, the reason anyone should care is because I would suggest we build data products to increase revenue, to reduce costs, to make ourselves compliant with things. But the reason we use data products is agility. And so I can build a data product, and I can make that available very quickly. And if I need to modify it, I can modify it very quickly. And this is the difference between what we've done before, where we've built warehouses and marts. So that's why I think people should care. So I am slightly earlier than I expected. So I think I've got about 5 minutes left. So we can take some questions, or you can all go, or we can sit in silence, because the seats are probably more comfortable than walking around the booths. Happy with either of those options, or any of those options, I should say. Yeah, any questions? Oh, it's a man at the front. I need to pick up these, don't I?
Hi, Andy.
What's that?
Sorry. Thanks for the talk. Can we build, in your opinion, a warehouse and data products on top of it?
No. So the simple answer. So you will hear people say, good point. I don't need that. So the question was, can we build a warehouse with data products on top of it? That to me is building data marts. Now, I guess you can, right? I'm not really sure that's data products. You could build a mart and you could put some metadata context around it, and we could call it a data product. And I suspect there are some organizations that are doing that. The reason I say no is sort of, I'm sort of slightly forthright in some occasions. But the reason I say no is because we lose the fundamental agility. If I want to modify my data product and that data is not already in the staging layer or the integrated layer or the curated layer, how long does it take me? How many phone calls do I have to make to get that data into my data product? And typically, you phone someone up and you say, I need this data, central data team responsible for this process, for the warehouse, and 6 months later they go, here's the data, and 1 of 3 outcomes, right? The data is exactly what I wanted. Wicked. It's only taken 6 months, but wicked. The second scenario is the data is not what I wanted, but I don't care, because 6 months is a long time, no longer relevant. So someone's wasted a lot of time and effort. And the third option is the worst one, which is the data's still important, it's the wrong data, so let's start the process again. And so that's why I think, and this is slightly controversial, and if Bill Inman was here, he would probably punch me in the face, but I think data warehouses have kind of had their day. They were great, and they are great if you occupy or live in an industry or a marketplace where the data requirements of your business do not change. And I actually met a guy This is a long answer. I actually met a guy in Germany about a year or so back, 2 years back, at a conference, and he came over and he said, "What's all this data mesh stuff that you got plastered over?" And we had a bit of a conversation. Turns out he's near retirement. And the reason that's important is because he's had a warehouse for 20 years in a massive German bank. And in the last 15 years, they've not added a single data source, and they've not had a single request for additional data. It does compliance reporting. The rules haven't changed. Data mesh, data products are irrelevant to that person. And he was fine with that. You know, he said, "I've got 5 years till retirement. I'm just going to keep using the warehouse." So in that scenario, don't think about data mesh or data products. But in the scenario where things change, requirements change, data changes, we buy a company, we buy some software, we buy an application, we have new data, we want to use data products, we lose the agility as soon as we start thinking about warehouse. Sorry, every answer I give you will be a long conversation. Apologies. I can't answer a question with a yes or a no. Okay. Anyway, next question, anyone? There's a man at the back.
A follow-up to that one.
Yep.
If you have a warehouse, but people want to be getting some of the benefits of thinking about data as products, is there a journey, a halfway house, where you can build some data products on top of a warehouse with a view to moving towards breaking up that monolith of the warehouse? Is that useful? Is that valuable?
Yeah. So the question was, for those that didn't hear, is there a way of coming from a data warehouse to kind of data products in an easier fashion, I guess, than starting from scratch and doing a revolution? And I think broadly the answer is yes. I could obviously, from a Starburst perspective, buy Starburst. That'll solve all your problems, because clearly technology solves everything. That's why we have robots that are making tea for us already. But I think there probably is an approach, and I think maybe we start going back through the process. So maybe we start with a data product based on maybe our staging layer, for example, or maybe we go one back. We have data products that instead of relying on that curated layer, we have data products that are based on the integrated layer, and then over time we start thinking, well, actually, let's give the data product developers in the lines of business or in the team, domains or whatever we want to call them, let's start giving them access to further and further upstream in that data warehouse. And I think that's probably a good place to start. And as soon as they get back to that sort of, let's say, staging areas in warehouses typically map, not completely, but typically map close to the applications, or the OLTP systems, I should say. And so that would probably be the way I would sort of think about it. And obviously, as you do that, over time, you'll have less and less data in the sort of serving layer, the curated layer that's being used by users. You'll have less and less of that that's being used, because people will start hopefully using the data products. And that's why we took out my carrot slide. There was a slide about a carrot. Anyway, but hopefully over time we will have less and less usage of those curated data marts and more data products, and we can start, retiring data pipelines into the warehouse. So that's probably the way that I would think about that. I don't know if that's useful. Any other questions? Oh, we've got 2 minutes. That wasn't a question.
Okay.
I'm happy to stand in silence. I'm not kidding. Oh, there we go. Have we got a microphone, lady? And this gentleman, 3 from the back. Forward, come forward.
Thank you very much. Data governance, data quality.
Yeah.
Your data product still needs that blessed data to make it valuable.
Yep.
Yeah. So how am I, going to meet that challenge when I have that super duper data product that I'll offer my organisation?
So the question was basically, how do we do data quality in data products? So I mentioned federated computational governance. I think I said that. Maybe I didn't. But federated computational governance, that's a massive subject. And that's something we could get into later on, because I don't want to bore everyone with it. But what I will say, data quality is quite interesting. I would argue data quality doesn't work in a warehouse. And the reason it can't work in a warehouse is because your definition of data quality is different from mine. once we put it all into a warehouse, we've decided that everyone's definition is the same. And so I would say data products actually enable us to do better data quality, right? So if we've got a data product that's really aimed at machine learning, maybe we want to keep all of the nulls in, right? And the reason for that is because there must be an upstream system. Oh, okay. So I've got to finish. That is generating nulls, right? And what do? Are we going to fix it there? Or actually is that relevant and valuable to know that we have nulls? Because those nulls might have some value to a data scientist. To a BI user, or maybe a different use case, different context, actually we don't want nulls, right? We want to normalize them or whatever in some way. So I think the concept moving towards data products enables you to have context-specific data quality rules. How we manage that across data products, because there will clearly be some data rules, data quality rules that we want. Maybe we want to make sure that for a vast number of data products, they don't have missing values, or they don't have null values, or whatever it is. There probably will be some rules that we want to put across the business, across the data products. In that case, we probably want to start thinking about common rules, a common set of rules that apply. And then when I think about this, I think at the point of publishing, we probably want a set of rules that look at that data product JSON file that I described. And maybe what we do is we use the concept of tags, right? And we say, actually, I want to tag this data product in such a way that it must conform to these rules. And we run those rules, and actually this is something that one of the TV companies is doing in the UK. When they publish a data product, they run a whole battery of rules, standard ones for every data product and then additional ones for that data product, which basically check, is this null? Does this key have 3 letters, 5 numbers, etc., etc. So that's what I would call unit tests, right? They're just applying unit tests for those data products, and they are kind of looking at that text file definition of the data product and checking what rules they need to run based on the contents of that file. So there are ways and means of doing this. Yeah, apparently I've got to speed up. So there are ways and means of doing this, but I think it should make our lives easier. I don't think there's a ready-made solution. I don't think anyone in this hall is doing data product, data quality solutions. Which is a problem, which we need to solve. But anyway, we should probably end there. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for staying. Thank you.